Long ago, Spokane was home to a vibrant Asian community made up largely of Chinese and Japanese immigrants. Centered in what was known as the International District downtown, this community began forming in the 1880s when Chinese and Japanese men arrived to work on the railroads and in nearby mines. Many of them settled in a compact 3-block area of courtyards and alleys, an enclave that became known as Trent Alley, Japanese Alley, or simply Chinatown. The area, scattered with gambling houses, bars, opium dens, and bordellos, was considered a slum until 1900. By 1910, workers began to bring over wives and relatives, which in turn made the area thrive with hotels, boarding houses, fish markets, restaurants, barber shops, billiard halls, and laundries. Soon, the community grew to over 1,000 residents, with more Japanese than Chinese, but also Italians, Germans, Irish, Greek, and others.
Well, I would say it was a community for them. So when they came and had that area to go to, and that was their life, and at least they had that, right? Yeah, so they supported each other, they helped each other, they got work for each other. In lots of ways, that's how communities are built with different nationalities, right?
It was a thriving Japanese business area down there. The optometrist, there was dentist, there was a pharmacy. So it was a very strong, tight community.
Trent Alley began to decline in the 1920s as Japanese immigration slowed and was eventually banned. The Great Depression severely impacted the area, and by 1935, only 385 people remained. But then the neighborhood saw a resurgence during World War II as Japanese American families escaped the internment camps.
Before the war, there weren't that many Japanese at all that lived in Spokane. After the war and after Japanese got released from internment camp, that's when it grew. But when people left camp, they didn't know where to go. And so they really traveled by word of mouth. That's how my mom ended up in Trent Alley as well, is because they knew one person who said, come live here. And Trent Alley became that place. It was not a glamorous place by any means. I mean, I think the general public in Spokane thought of it as Skid Row, but Japanese weren't allowed to live in many places. I don't think they were allowed to live above 9th Avenue. So there was a place of congregation there. There was a place of community there.
98-year-old Kazue remembers coming to Spokane after high school.
I didn't go to school in Spokane because I graduated from Heart Mountain Relocation Center in 1945. When we first came out from camp, my dad knew the owner. I don't think the Japanese owned anything anyway in those days, but he knew the man that ran the Clem Hotel on Trent Avenue. Trent Alley was mostly people from camp that came there to live. So there was a lot of Japanese that moved to Spokane. And my dad, he ran a pool hall on, I think it was Trent and Bernard.
What we pretty much knew about Trent Alley was from stories passed down. And our parents, they were Nisei, so second generation. So we really heard the good parts of Trent Alley because really it was their parents, Iseis, that struggled, especially those who came after the war when they had nothing and they really weren't from Spokane. So starting over and not having money, I think, would be unimaginable.
As I've gotten older, I've heard stories of how awful it was to live in a downtown hotel, to not have a bathroom, to not have a kitchen, to be at the mercy of kind restaurant owners or kind people to let them shower who had one.
Discrimination barred Asian immigrants from many parts of Spokane society. Residents often lived where they worked, renting back rooms or flats above their businesses, which made for a strong community in Trent Alley until the 1950s.
When I was in high school, I had several classmates that lived downtown, whether they owned a laundry or a hotel the families lived behind their shop. But they'd never tell their Caucasian friends. To them it was embarrassing because they didn't own a home. But back in those days, Japanese Americans, they were not allowed to own a home above 9th Avenue.
Sisters Carla, Marcy, and Rona didn't live in Trent Alley but had fond memories visiting the area with their parents.
I did not go to Trent Alley very often. We went to a pharmacy, and they had a lot of knickknacks, so we got to look at those things. And then there was a fountain, and we went there for kintokis, and it's an ice cream, shredded ice and beans. Going to the fountain was our treat. The fountain had a big ice block that they would shred right there.
Plus a canary bird in a cage, and that was kind of special. And then also North Coast Supply, which was the only grocery store in town that had Japanese food and gift items. That was about the only place you could go if you wanted Japanese food.
Very little remains of Trent Alley, and you would not know that it even had existed, except for a plaque recently installed at the Saranac Building, dedicated to the Japanese and others that lived in the area.
Every time we get together and talk, because now it's a subject that we bring up frequently because we know we're the elders, so we hold the most information. So it is an opportunity for us to share and to talk about it, to connect the dots. I think there's some dots that are missing. And every time we meet, I learn something new.